Buongiorno amici di Passion for Fun, terzo giorno di Etna Comics, siamo in compagnia di Esad Ribić, autore e illustratore di fama internazionale. Thank you Esad for your time.
Well, thank you for inviting me here again.
Allora, nel 2000 hai disegnato gli X-Men, com'è stato il debutto e soprattutto quale X-Men ti è piaciuto disegnare di più?
So, up until the point when I was supposed to do, it was called Children of the Atom, I've never read X-Men in my life, so I didn't know anything about that. But the thing is, it was one of those fill-in jobs. The original artist was late too much for them, so they invited me to finish last two issues. There was actually some other guy who did one issue previous, so I would say the original artist did only like first half of the book, and that kind of stuff is usually done in a haste. I had a deal to do a totally different project with them that fell through, because I started working with Marvel right at the time when they were having kind of change of guards, you know. Joe Quesada was becoming new editor-in-chief, new publisher came from somewhere else, and that meant that they kind of stopped working with a lot of previous writers and artists that they just didn't like, and recruited some new people, and I was one of those. So the guy who wrote the book we were supposed to do got let off, and I was left without the project, and they offered me to do the fill-in instead. And you might imagine I never practically heard of any of those characters, really. And having to do the two issues in like less than 2 months, I think it was like 6 or 7 weeks for both issues. It was like really tight schedule. So, and I did covers too. So it's one of those things where you just forget you have a razor, you know, just to be as fast as possible, and that's how I did it. So sorry to say, but there wasn't any, you know, most dear characters of that bunch for me. Later I kind of developed, you know, like I did some more of that stuff, so I kind of developed preference for a couple of different characters that you can say just fit my style better than some others. But at that point, nothing.
Parlaci di Thor e qual è secondo te la presa sul pubblico di un mito così antico ma attuale ai giorni nostri?
The way I approached it was as a pure myth. Through most of the Thor's history, I would say that it was half superhero, half mythology treatment. I tried to go whole hog on mythology part as much as I could in the story, and it helped that the story was done in very mythological nature. You know, like Jason Aaron, he writes all kinds of different stuff, and some of it that he writes, I would say, you know, fits very well my sensibilities, and that was definitely the case with our Thor run, you know. On that, I was really happy with it. There's some other stuff that he writes that I just don't see myself being a right artist for, you know. So he does all kinds of different shit. So yeah, I loved it. It was not burdened by continuity. Continuity means you have to have some other characters intrude on your story all the time. We avoided that for most part, you know, So I would say it's this whole Gore, the God Butcher saga is kind of very self-sufficient. That's actually the type of books I like to do, you know. That's type of books I like to read too, you know. I gotta admit I'm not too much of a continuity guy, you know.
Hai creato un one shot di Conan the Barbarian Exodus. Ti piace il personaggio?
Conan was, you know, something that I grew up on. First discovered, obviously, the Frazetta paintings that I really liked. I loved them. Like, ever since I was, I would guess, 8, I remember trying to copy his stuff, you know, even at that age. Obviously, it was not very good, but it kind of resonated with me ever since I was a kid. And then I discovered that it was, you know, not just a comic book, but it's done after the stories. So I went and read the stories. I loved those. So it's just, you know, I spent a lot of time as a teenager pouring through that material, you know, and since I was a big fan of John Buscema, and he did a lot of Conan stuff, so for me it was just like perfect match of my favorite American artists and my favorite American hero at that point, you know. So what's not to like there? So there's a lot of prehistory with me and Conan, and I wanted to do something that would kind of be a good jumping on point for somebody who never read the Conan, let's say. Like, I didn't want to adhere to any of the books because they've done that shit a lot back in 70s and stuff like that. So I just went for, let's say, my version of that kind of stuff. And I wanted to do like more of a, let's say, fight with the nature story, you know, and it was fun to do because for a while I wasn't painting. Like, I spent a lot of my career painting comics, and that was first painted comic after a while that I did, so that was fun to do. I wrote it, and it was mostly silent, so it was all down to art, and I really liked doing that. You know, when I was doing it, there was this idea to expand the story into like a mini-series, but then COVID hit and plans changed, so it's just remained one-issue thing. But now I'm doing something else. They must have liked what I did with that Conan story, because they offered me to write some more stuff with them, which is what I'm doing right now, actually, and I'm gonna paint that too, but we're gonna talk about that at some later point, because once they decide to announce it, then we can start talking about it, you know.
Nel 2020 sei stato annunciato come illustratore della maxi-serie di Eternals. Cosa ne pensi del film?
I didn't like it at all. Very simple. I think that, let's put it this way, the way the Eternals are devised, it's based on Herbert von Däniken, you know, it's like a pseudo-history series of books that he did back in 70s that were huge hits. And Eternals was very influenced by that. Obviously, Kirby probably read Däniken's books. And he wasn't the only one, because later you had Indiana Jones, which is pretty much every Indiana Jones movie, you know, the basic idea is taken from Däniken stuff. Anyways, so he did this thing that's kind of reinvention of you know, well, basically superhero team, you know. You can look at them as a different kind of Avengers or something, but it was done as, you know, pure pseudo-mythology, and that's how it should be treated. I tried to do as much of that as I could, you know, to make them more just like mythological figures, and as opposed to superhero figures. But I don't think movie did that very well. They came out as just regular characters, you know. There's no feeling that they're, you know, thousands of years old at all, you know. Action is generic. I think that's probably the worst Marvel movie I've ever seen. I haven't seen them all, so maybe there's something even worse than that. But out of the ones I've seen, Eternals is by far the worst movie that Marvel Studios did, I would say. So I didn't like it at all.
Sappiamo che ti piace il Rinascimento italiano. Cosa ti ha catturato di questi grandi artisti e che influenza hanno sul tuo disegno?
Around the same time I discovered Frazetta, and it was those Conan illustrations. I ran into Caravaggio. Back then I actually probably wasn't even aware that he was dead for like 400 years at that point. It was just, oh, this is great. And then you see something else that kind of resonates with you, and then you realize, oh, it's the same guy. Well, let's look for some more. And then you kind of discover, oh, it's a Renaissance. It's like almost 500 years old. Okay, you know. So that was some of my early influences. So this, you can say, chiaroscuro thing that he was doing influenced me a lot. And it was just, you know, more dramatic than the other stuff from the period. A lot of that other stuff is technically brilliant, but it's kind of distant. This thing is kind of more visceral, so I would guess that's what attracted me, you know, at such a young age. So you might say that Caravaggio might be like a getaway drug to other stuff, you know, because as a kid you can appreciate it, you know. So yeah, that influenced me a lot, and it's another stuff that I tried to emulate early on and obviously couldn't. But yeah, I'm still fascinated with that stuff, you know. Later on I found some other painters and I kind of expanded my, you know, tastes of that kind of stuff and moved off from, you know, that chiaroscuro stuff. But it's still in my DNA. It's still like, you know, a lot of what I do is still very influenced by that. Even though probably on a surface level my stuff probably looks closer to Frazetta, you know, but on a conceptual level I would say it's more of a Caravaggio influence still.
Progetti futuri.
Okay, right now I'm writing this 30-page story, which I can't talk about really because once it gets announced, once I actually start, you know, drawing it, I guess, then we can talk about it, so I can't talk about that. And there's another mini-series with Marvel I'm gonna do with some of my old collaborators, which I can't talk about either.
Okay.
So I'm doing nothing. Let's put it that way.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ringraziamo Esad Ribić. Ciao a tutti amici di Passion for Fun.
Grazie mille. passionforfun.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.